Hello there. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear me well. Could you please send a message, or Julia, could you tell me if you can hear me well?
Yes, we can hear you well, and we also see the presentation.
All right, thanks a lot. All right, welcome everyone to this webinar about the FDM, the Facility Data Management for the Higg FEM. And so I know that all of you are very keen on making sure that you have good and quantitative data in your system, and including also in the Higg FEM, the Facility Environmental Module. But what we have seen is that it's not always so easy to make sure that the data quality is really, really good. There are some errors that can happen, and there are mistakes that happen. And therefore, we have seen that, for example, also Cascale and Sumera, they are putting more and more emphasis on the quality of the data. And that is why we have decided to organize this webinar for you, where we will really focus only on the data management in the Higg FEM. And also, as you know, there is a separate tool available, the Facility Data Management tool. So my name is Karen Ekberg, and I'm the CEO and founder of Leadership and Sustainability. I'm also Higg FEM verifier and a trainer. And I have a long background in the sustainability area. And with that, I would like also to give you some information about the Zoom that we are using. In the control panel, you are actually muted, all of you, in order to make sure that we have a really good audio quality. But you are welcome to send your questions in the Q&A function during the webinar. And we will have time to discuss your questions towards the end of this webinar. So you click to open the Q&A, you type your question, and then you send it off. And just for your information, you will receive this presentation, and you will receive the recording a few days, up to 2 to 3 days after this webinar. So rest assured, you will receive all the information. Great. So now let's go to the agenda for today. So I will speak about the Facility Data Manager and the integration of the Facility Data Manager into the FEM, the Facility Environmental Module. And then we will talk about data quality management system. We will talk about the data collection and reporting. And we also have some examples for you on how to normalize and also how to develop an improvement plan. And we also have some do's and don'ts in terms of reporting in the different categories that we have. And then we will also speak a bit about the added value about the Higg FEM. We have some information about leadership and sustainability. And as I mentioned, we will have time for your questions today as well. So the Facility Data Manager and the integration of that. So we have now a separate tool, the Facility Data Manager. And for all of you who have a Higg FEM, you also have access to the Facility Data Manager. And it is integrated or coordinated with the Higg FEM starting in January 2025, but you can actually use data that you have collected for 2024 as well. So if you have completed the FDM to 100% for all months, so that's important that you have the entire calendar year of 2024 included in your FDM, you can actually import this data into the FEM when you start your FEM. And I guess that many of you have already started to complete your self-assessment in the FEM, so you probably already have seen this function. But this is how it looks like. You can then select to import the facility data. And generally, of course, you can also roll forward the qualitative data. But as I said, for the quantitative data, you really need to have the entire 12 months of 2024 included. And of course, that makes sense because in the Higg FEM, we use only the annual values and the annual quantities. And the FDM, the data in the FDM, you can actually also validate that throughout the year by third-party providers such as leadership and sustainability. We are approved to conduct also validations for the FDM. And you can do the validation on a monthly basis, on a quarterly basis, twice a year, or also annually. And this would, of course, be a sort of a safety measure and an assurance that the data is correct, and doing that early in order to make sure that towards the end of the year you have the complete and your high quality of all your data. And then in the Higg FEM, there is a new question actually, and that is in the EMS. And there are, of course, a few more questions, but one that I want to focus on here, and that is in the EMS section. There is a new question, number 11, at level 1. So this is a question that you will need to respond to in this year. And that is, does your facility have a data quality management system for quantitative metrics? And of course, the reason that this question is included is what I talked about before, the need to really make sure that we have a really, really good quality in the quantitative data. And the system, the data quality management system, should include documented roles and responsibilities. So you need to make sure you have a team, you have people who have specific roles and responsibilities related to data quality management system. You should also have a procedure, a centralized procedure on how to collect and manage your data. You should have capacity building and training of staff on environmental data quality principles. And you should finally also have internal quality assurance procedures. So this is about the 4I principle, that you have at least one more person looking at the data. And we know in all factories, we have a lot of people who are really good at numbers, both in the production and in the administration. You have a lot of people who are very much qualified to make assurance of this data. And then you can answer yes to this question if your system actually covers all the 4 elements listed above. But if you are missing 1 or 2 elements, you can only respond partially yes. And this is really important. There are some questions in the Higg FEM where you can only respond partially, where you can only respond with a full yes if you have all the elements that are listed as requirements. And this is one of those questions. So this is an important question because it will help you to build a systematic approach to ensure your data quality. And now, what are the quantitative data requirements? And I have several slides here about different elements of the data requirements. So first of all, the data collection. The verifiers, so the third-party organization that you are working with as a verifier for your FEM, they are actually required to review all aspects of the facilities tracking program and such a program that could produce inaccuracies. So we are required to look at the initial data collection processes and the data sources. We are required to look at the process and tools used to aggregate the data, so all the calculations, unit conversions, etc. And we are also not required, but we suggest that you collect all your data into one spreadsheet, that you have a systematic approach, that you use an Excel. If you don't have a software, of course, if you have a software, yes, but even for a software system, you need to have your proof documents available and your calculations available. Perhaps you cannot do them in the software itself. And in that case, you should upload all the related documents into your software. And so, but I recommend for those of you who don't have a separate software system to collect this data, I recommend to use one spreadsheet where you have all your different data collection and all your different data, all your calculations, your unit conversions, etc. And even in one folder system, then also upload and have available all your invoices. So you need to keep all the data complete. And by the way, we as verifiers, we are required to respond to questions in the tool. You may not see them because we respond to them not during the verification, but after the verification when we prepare the module to send it off to you. We need to respond to questions like, did you check this? Did you check historical data? Etc. And who did the actual quantitative data review? Perhaps sometimes you have another verifier who's doing that job. So that is also a proof for you how important Sumera and Cascale see this data collection process. And also just one detail, please be careful with unit conversions. Perhaps you collect your data with one unit, but that unit is not available in the tool, and then you need to make a conversion, and that calculation needs to be correct. And so if we continue here now about the data collection, you should make sure you compare your data with the original source invoices. That's also a requirement for verifiers. We need to review each and every invoice you have available to see that, for example, your electricity actually, the consumption in January was actually according to what the invoice for January says. And therefore also it is good practice to have an internal verification done of all your data. And you saw in the data quality management system question that that is also actually now a requirement within the Higg FEM. And then I always speak about a plausibility test. So ask yourself, does this number make sense? And you can compare perhaps with other facilities, or you can Google, you can check, and just make sure that you think that the numbers you report, that they are actually plausible, that they are realistic at all. So for example, if I tell you that my factory is using 60 million cubic meter water per year, do you think that that quantity is really realistic? Is it really plausible? No, it is not. I don't know of any factory that uses that much water. And if they do, they would probably know that they are one of the highest water consumers. So this is important. Always, take one step back and ask yourself, do these numbers make sense? Compare also with your last year's data. Was this in the range of what I reported last year as well? And there is actually now, when you will submit your self-assessment, when you are posting your self-assessment in the Higg FEM today, there is like a sort of a bit of a quality check and making or a quantity check to see if the numbers make sense. Yeah. So in this case, the 60 million cubic meter water do not make sense. And also, if we, of course, and that is the same we do for all FEM questions, if there is an error in the self-assessment, we need to correct it. So we need to mark it up as inaccurate, and then make the corresponding change and write a comment why the response was changed. And now I want to speak a bit about normalizing. So some factories, they normalize their units when they set targets. And normalizing is about making sure that you can compare your data year over year. So for example, in the production, the electricity use in the production. If your production is fluctuating a bit year by year, then your electricity consumption will also fluctuate. Of course, in the production building, you have lighting, etc., that perhaps is the same or consumes the same amount of electricity independent of the actual production volumes. But usually you would have a significant portion of your electricity consumption that is related directly to the production volumes you have. And therefore, for production, it usually makes sense to normalize your values. Normalizing means that you compare your electricity consumption in this case with your actual production volume. And then you create a normalized value. And if your volume of production then changes year by year, usually that KPI, so to say, that normalized value will stay more constant. And then it's easier to compare, because otherwise perhaps you have the impression that you have reduced your electricity consumption, let's say with 10%, but actually your production volume was lower in 1 year, so it was 15% lower. So then it makes sense that your electricity production is lower as well, but you haven't done anything to save any energy. So it looks as if you have been saving energy, but you haven't. So that's why we normalize. And so the baselining, the target setting, etc., can be absolute or normalized. Absolute is just keeping the numbers that you have and not relate them to production. And normalized, as I said, is then for example, as we see here, 0.15 kilowatt hour per unit of production. And I usually recommend to normalize just in order to be able to compare in a better way if you're actually saving energy or not, or saving water. So this is the same principle applies, of course, to any quantitative production-related consumption value. So it can be energy, it can be water, it can even be waste, etc. And as I said, please keep all your calculations in the same table in one spreadsheet. So very often we see handmade calculations on a piece of paper somewhere in the invoices or in another table, etc. But I would really ask you to set up your system once and for all, because if you use the same system year by year, you have it already structured and well organized, and that pays off. So I see facilities that year by year they have the same problem, and you can see that when you look back that they have been using the same paper-based system, let's say. And here is now one example of a data collection table that you could use for yourself in order to prepare yourself to insert the data into the Higg FEM or into the FDM, of course. And here in this case, this is about air emissions. So this is an example of an air emission inventory. And then for the validation or for the verification, as I mentioned, the verifier must check the invoices. So actually we had recently one facility that started to create a table that looks like this, where you have, for example, now for electricity, for every month when they have received an invoice, they list the invoice number here, they list the consumption, and then the verifier can take the invoice, have a look at the invoice, check the number, look into this table. The number is correct with the one that the facility has already inserted for me. And then I can say, okay, I have validated or verified this number. And if there are any comments needed, I can write it here. This is a very simple approach to actually help prepare the verification in a good manner. So otherwise we often experience that there is a lot of rushing around, having to collect invoices, coming with files, with big files, with a lot of papers in there. And it takes a lot of additional time for the verifier. And that's, of course, also the reason why we as verifiers are actually required to ask for your invoices in advance of the verification. We are not required to do the entire verification of all the data before we go there, but we are required to have a look at these documents and see if they make sense, see if there is something missing. And I usually anyway seek to prepare as much as possible before the actual verification day. because that will save time for the factory and will make it more effective during the verification. So I usually go through those invoices and have a look and see if the numbers are correct with the numbers that have been reported into the FEM. So this would be a simple tool. There is some additional work, of course, for the facility to do this, but if you do this every month, let's say, then it will become a good habit for you, and it will be much easier to do that, as opposed to if you are doing it only once a year. Because if I do something only once a year, I forget everything about how to do it in between, because the 1 year is a long period of time. There's a lot of time to forget. But if I do something every month, it's easier for it to become a good habit for me. At least that is how it works for me. And then, so now a very, very simple normalized baseline example. So in this case, we have a very simple number. We have an electricity consumption of 1 million kilowatt hour in 1 year. And in that year, we had produced 500,000 garments. And then the normalized value is 1 million kilowatt hour divided by 500,000 garments. And this means that there are 2 kilowatt hour consumed per garment shipped. So this is, of course, a simplified number, but the formula looks like that. Always you have the total consumption value and you divide with your production volume. So there can be 500,000 garments, it can be 5,000 kilogram of fabric or something else. But this is the approach to normalize. Also, just to be clear, if you decide to normalize now, in this case, your baseline, then of course your target needs to be normalized as well. And when you compare if you are reaching your targets, you need to use normalized values as well. So you cannot use mix and match here. You need to decide for this particular KPI, for this particular consumption, am I going to use absolute numbers or am I going to use normalized numbers? And then pull it through. All right. And the other thing is, of course, that the normalized values, I mean, usually you would set a target for a few years ahead of time. And you know that in the Higg FEM, in the EMS section, you are requested to have an environmental strategy that goes at least 3 years into the future. So this means also that you set the baseline once, and you should select a year when you had more or less stable production. So if you had a very low production in the COVID year 2020, or perhaps even also in the following year 2021, I would not use that year as the baseline year, because then I think you are punished from the beginning, because probably your production is higher today, and so that would not work well. Then if we go to the setting targets, so of course the target setting is really important, and you know, there is a saying, you can't improve what you don't measure, and there are people who don't like setting targets, but I think we need to do that. And if you set a target, you can also reach it, and you have something to work towards. But of course, also the reason is that we do want to improve our performance year by year. And you as a factory, you will want to improve your performance. And of course, also the brands that you are producing for, they are asking you to improve your performance. And especially now with climate change and with science-based targets, many of the brands that you are producing for, they have defined science-based targets that they have committed to. And they are now rolling out their programs into the supply chain and asking their suppliers to also reduce their energy consumption. But that comes true, of course, also for water consumption, for waste, etc. So then, of course, it's an opportunity to report. And I think sustainability is really a journey of continuous improvement. We should always try to improve our performance. and reduce our environmental footprint since we are talking about environment here, but of course the same would be true for social. And so that's a really important piece here. And now energy reduction target. So the formal target should include, you should base the target on a formal evaluation of improvement opportunities and actions. You want to have a realistic target. And you should define the exact target quantity. You need to decide, as we discussed already, if it's absolute or normalized. You should have a start date and an end date, and you should have measurement units. And you should ensure that the target is really relevant to reducing the site's energy use. And then you should develop a detailed implementation plan, and I suggest with monthly monitoring milestones. Bad practice would be to set a target and then 1 year later you come back and say, oh, oops, I didn't reach this target. Now I need to set a new one. And this comes now from the How to Higg, the reporting the targets in Higg FEM. Here are some do's. Review the target to ensure all aspects are covered. Ensure the targeted reduction or improvement. Enter the targeted reduction or improvement as a percentage. Select the appropriate target type, absolute or normalized, and provide sufficient details on how the target will be met describe the measures plan to achieve this target field. And do not report a target that is not accurate. Report a target that is based on insufficient data. Report an estimated target if it's not supported by verifiable and accurate estimation methodology and data. It doesn't make sense to set a target and you don't know if you will ever be able to reach it. And here is now an example with a table, very, very simple targets in the areas of energy, water use, and air emissions. So, for example, if you have a result in 2021 on 1 million kilowatt hour, you want to reduce you have set a target for 50,000 reduction in 2022, then you should reach 0.95 million kilowatt hours. And so on. And this is how you can work. This is a very simplified table. But then regarding the action plans, and you know these questions come in the Higg FEM as well. And there is a template available. You can click on this link here, and then you need to scroll down because there are quite a lot of different templates available on that page. And here is now also one example. It's just a small example. It's also not totally comprehensive, but this is what it could look like, where you have the actual target, you have the actions you want to implement in order to reach the target, what you expect from that, and then the cost of the implementation, when it should be completed, and who is responsible. And then for following up, and here are some principles that I wanted to show as well. So the principles for quantitative data management are completeness, make sure the data is complete, accuracy, consistency, so consistent year by year, for example, transparency, and then data quality management. And you saw the new question in the EMS, question number 11 for data quality management. So and there is consistency year by year, but of course also in terms of having a good flow from the measurements, from the baselining to the targets, to the follow-ups, etc. And then, and here's now one example from waste on how to report improvements in the Higg FEM. And this is also from the How to Higg. So review the improvement data to ensure all aspects noted are covered. Enter the improvement quantity either as an absolute or normalized value, depending on what you have selected for the target. Select the appropriate units and input the % change in the waste quantity. So if you have reduced your waste, you should have a minus sign ahead of the 5 if it is a 5% reduction, and if you actually increased your waste, it should be just without a sign, but then you include the 5. And then you should also provide sufficient details in the describe the strategies used to achieve this improvement field. All right. So let me continue. And here are now some best practices. I talked about the units of measurement. Make sure also that you have a consistent approach there. So if you report always in gallon of water, then continue to do so and don't change suddenly to liter instead, or even cubic meter, because that will just confuse everything. So keep it, decide at the beginning how you want to do it, and then keep it like that month by month and year by year. Have your regular data collection reporting. I already mentioned that I think at least the monthly data collection and reporting is a really good approach to create good habits. Use technology wherever possible to reduce errors, and also train your employees on data accuracy. Make invoices and calculations available to verifiers. We talked about that already as well. And as I said, if you don't have a software tool, use an Excel table and keep everything in that table year by year. And continuing with the best practices, invest in reliable equipment, of course, for measurements. So, for example, flow meters, etc. Make sure that they are calibrated on in regular periods, etc. Schedule your periodic reporting, establish a data collection record, and then train your employees. And now also, you all know that since last year, so since the FEM 4.0 was launched last year, you can now report data by facility type. So some of you only have one facility type in your company or in your factory, but some others you may have 2 or even more facility types. So in this case, for example, if you have selected that you are a finished product assembler and that you have material production, then you can report these data for energy and for water separately. So there will be a question, are you able to report depending on your facility type, and then you can do that. So you should then report both for finished product assembler and for material production. In the case if you are only a cut and sew facility, so you only have one facility type, then you will report accordingly. And then, of course, for a cut and sew facility, you are a finished product assembler, so you would report only there. And this makes it a bit complicated. And you may also be aware that there is also the question if you can report separately for your domestic use of energy and water and your production use. So you may have perhaps 2 or 3 or 4 tables that you will need to complete then if you are able to report on these separately. And so, and your annual volume, your annual unit will actually be used to normalize in the sections. So that is also done automatically, even though, yes, and then you have either unit, piece or pair. This is, this is for the finished product assembler, and then, or you have kilograms. And they are based on the facility type, and these will also be pre-populated for you. But you are also allowed to report on an additional unit of measurement for your annual volume of production. So that can be meter or standard allowed minutes, etc. And here now you see the table with the default unit of measurement that you will have. So for finished product assembly, you have in units, and in all other cases, you have kilograms. And now, and what I would like to do now, I would like to give you a small demo and show you what the FDM looks like. So let me just stop sharing first, and then I will go to the FDM, and here I will now share again. So let me do that now. And now I will share this screen. I think you should now be able to see the FDM. Julia, is that correct?
Yes, we can see the FDM
All right, thank you
section
so
now.
much. Great, wonderful. So now you see here, and this is just a testing account for us. Since we are not a facility, we will not submit this actually. But you have a dashboard as usual with the FEM, and here you can now see the reporting details. So this is the first section, and then you have for all the different topics that we have in the FEM as well. You also have, but not for chemicals, sorry. You have also, and not for EMS, but then for the different sections you have response options here. And now, for example, I will report for January in 2024. I will say how many days I operated in that reporting period, so not in the year, but actually in January. And then I can select here which sections I want to report on during this reporting period. So I can select just a few, or I can select all of them. And I think in this case, I have selected all of them. And then I go to the site section. I have selected Indonesia, and here you can see I have selected both finished product assembler and finished product processing. And I have then selected apparel and so a lot of different processes here. And now come all the questions regarding permits. You can see here, this is exactly the same table as you have in the FEM. So if you complete it here, you can just import it into your FEM. And now we come then to questions about the energy. Is your facility able to separately report energy consumption by each facility type? I have responded yes here. And then select all sources of energy for facility, and I have selected a few different here. And here now, does your facility identify and track separately your energy use in domestic versus production? And would you like to track electricity use by the meter? How many meters would you like to track for your domestic electricity use? So I have said that we have 3 meters. How many meters would you like to track for your production electricity use? So you see here in the FEM, you are not asked to report per meter. But here in the FDM, you can actually do that. So that's an additional benefit of using the FDM. You could have, if you have several meters in your facility, you can use the FDM to separately report for them. Okay, and then are some questions about diesel, and then if we are tracking for company-owned and controlled vehicles, etc. And then there are some questions that I didn't respond to here, because I really wanted, I don't want to go show you all the details here. I wanted to go to the energy section and show you what it looks like now. Because I said that I am able to report for domestic energy use. And then here I will get the question for which energy sources I can report for domestic use. So for example, for petrol, gasoline, I can say no here, for example. And then so I have said yes for CNG, I have said yes for diesel, and then I can add the quantities here. And now I also so this was for the other energy types, and now for electricity, I told the system that I have 3 meters, and then I get this table with all the 3 meters, and then I have added some simple names here: meter 1 office, meter 2 washrooms, meter 3 kitchen, and then I can add my consumption data for the separate meters. And now we get then the same question here for production energy use for the finished product assembler. And I said, no, we are not using this energy here at all. And then for finished product processing, I said yes, yes, and no, and we can add the data here. And now here you say the production electricity used for finished product assembler. There I had said 5 meters, and then they are asking me if I'm using them, and I said no, I'm using only 2. And then we have the same here for finished product processing. So these are the finished product assembler, and I said we are using only meter 1 and 2 there. And then for finished product processing, I said we are using meters 3, 4, and 5, etc. So here you can see this is really a good tool in that sense, because you can have a more granular report in your FDM. And with that, I will now stop sharing again, and I will move back to the presentation. So let me do that here. I hope you can now see.
Yes, we can see the presentation again.
Okay, that's great. All right, so that was the small demo I wanted to give you. And then I also wanted to give you some additional resources. This is information that is available on Wordly. So there is information about the FDM, about getting started, a quick start guide, a facility walkthrough, which is a video. There is also a question-by-question guidance available for FDM and an FAQ, and to how to make edits to previous monthly submissions, discussion about normalized and versus absolute targets, and how to roll forward the FEM site information and the target setting best practices. So you have a lot of resources just related to, related to the FDM. And now let me give you some information about leadership and sustainability, and after that we will take your questions. So we still have time for questions. And so leadership and sustainability, we were actually I was actually the very first Higg FEM verifier several years ago. And so that's a bit exciting. And then in the meantime, there are now hundreds of Higg FEM verifiers who are out very busy already now in April. It's a busy month for many verifiers. And leadership and sustainability, we are now more than 80 persons globally who are working with us. We are 11 persons in Germany at headquarters, but we also have entities. We have companies in several countries, and we have teams in even more countries. So we conduct SLCP audits, we conduct FEM and FDM audits. We also have a Higg FEM e-learning training. So when you receive the presentation, you can go and click on that link that you can see here, the blue or the lighter blue one. And you can then access our e-learning training, which will qualify you to say yes to the question in the FEM about authorized FEM training. So we are obviously an authorized training body. That's also, of course, important that when you select Higg FEM trainees, you need to check that the trainers are approved and the training bodies also approved. Then we do a lot in terms of chemical management and serious charge of hazardous chemicals, but also general, we develop handbooks for chemicals management. We conduct audits with brands for chemical management. We also develop complete supply chain management programs for brands, but also for bigger manufacturing groups. And you can see a list of the countries where we are available. So the Higg FEM, here is also a list of where we are available as Higg FEM verifiers. You can see our main contacts for the different regions here as well. And then we had a Higg FEM series with free webinars I think it was in February, March perhaps. And you can also go and listen to the recordings here. And here again is a link to the L&S Academy and also a direct link to the e-learning training. For ZTFC, we are ZTFC in-check verifiers and supplier to zero verifiers. And for ZTFC in-check verifiers, we are working together with ADEC and the clean chain software. So if you don't have a software for your ZTFC in-check verification yet, you can connect with us for both the in-check verification and for the clean chain software, and we would be happy to support you with that. And here's just one slide also about the clean chain, and here are ZTFC services and that we have available: trainings, in-check verifications, and supply to zero. And here is one slide with our capabilities in different countries. And with that, I have come to the question session. So let me go and have a look if I can find any questions from you. And yes, we have questions here, so I will pull them here. Yes, we have someone who is saying here there are too many calculations imposed on factories, too many tasks for us with the same employees. I realize that this might be really tough for the facilities, but also it is important to make sure that you have an environmental footprint that you can reduce over time. And so, and these are not too complicated calculations. So I would say, please invest that time to do these calculations and to make sure that your data quality is accurate. And you will see once you have that data management set up, you will see that it will get easier as well. And then someone was asking about the demo, but that I cannot change right now. Let me see here. Okay. This is a great question, and this is a question we should forward to Wordly. Is there an option, or will there be a future option for factories to upload their invoices directly and the numbers are automatically input versus manual input? Thinking there are AI tools that can do that without manual input. A great question that would really help a lot. And we know that there are software solutions out there where you can actually do that, where you would need to formalize let's say you have a PDF, the invoice is in a PDF format, then you would need to mark up what is what so that the software knows that, okay, this is the date, this is the energy type, this is the unit, this is the actual quantity, etc. But that's it is possible to do that. I guess it's quite costly to do so and not so easy, since you would need to basically then normalize the type of invoices that you upload. All right. Okay. In Higg FEM 2024, is scored or unscored question for one separating domestic and production energy and separating according facility type? Yes, no, those are not unscored questions. They are scored, and you will get a deduction in scores if you cannot separate. And then will Higg FEM 2025 verification cover all three levels? We don't know yet. Cascale and Sumera, they are working on this. There are working groups that have already started that work. We know that the intention is to expand the coverage of the verification, but we don't know exactly what that will look like. It should be in the Higg FEM 2025, yes. Okay, no more questions. I'm sure we have questions. We have more questions. We still have a few more minutes. Okay, Does it match equally the way facilities report quantitative data from FDM to FEM? For instance, in FEM now is requesting energy report per facility type. So when facility reports in pieces per, but then an optional additional, but this does not show in the CSV file. Yes, so the quantitative data that you insert into FDM is aligned with the FEM. And so in the FDM, as I just showed in the demo, you can also report per facility type. I showed you also that you can report per meter, but that is not shown in the FEM. Excuse me. In the FEM, the values from the different meters have been aggregated up to that facility type. But yes, they are aligned and consistent between each other, FDM and FEM. Regarding the CSV file, I'm not sure. Perhaps the optional additional is not included in the CSV file. I actually don't know that. And then how to export FDM data to Higg FEM. Well, if you have completed the FDM for the entire calendar year of 2024, and then you start your FEM, you will receive that question. There was a screenshot in the presentation. You will receive that question. Do you want to import your FDM data into FEM? And then you can do that. If you didn't do that for 2024, you can do that next year when you start with your Higg FEM. But then you need to make sure that you really use the FDM for the entire year. So you will need to report every month into the FDM. And then when you have it complete, you will then be able to import it. So you should always get that question when you start your FEM at the beginning. If you have already started your FEM, I am not sure you can import it now. I believe you need to do that at the very beginning. But if you have a question related to that, you might need to reach out to Wordly, via the support function in the module. Any question in FEM, go target setting and achievement check? Yes, but those questions are at level 2. So and so they are not verified. They used to be verified previously because we had those targets previously as well before we had FEM 4.0. But you also know that either in, let's say, energy, you complete the energy level 1, then the gate is open for you to respond to levels 2 and 3. And there you have the target setting and achievement check as well. And what is also new this year with the FEM 2024, even if you don't succeed with all the questions at level 1, let's say in the energy section, the questions at levels 2 and 3 are open and you can respond to them, but you will not get any score for these responses. Is FDM a tool to prepare for FEM and to encourage verification of data for FEM? Yeah, you could say it is. It is a support tool for FEM. Yeah. Great. Can FDM have function to set target for water and waste? Good question. I don't know if they have that. Let me have a look. If you can do that in the FDM, I will tell you quite soon. No, you don't set targets in the FDM. You just report your quantities. Yeah, you just report your quantities. Okay, then we probably need to study facility saving potential, which is not possible without energy audit. Yes, yes. It depends on your team and on the qualifications of your team. Some facilities do even energy audits by themselves. There are energy audit templates that you can even find if you Google, or if you have done, oh no, that's not true in the climate action training on Higg, there is no such table available. If you send us an email, we can actually send you a template for an energy audit. Even if you don't have an energy auditor, you can actually do a walkabout in your factory with a good checklist, and you can check which potential you have. If you want to go deeper and have a more qualified audit being done, then you can conduct an energy audit with an external third party. We have energy auditors in our team. We would be happy to support you as well. Okay, we already have a response also from Wordley here. There's no water waste target yet, but it's something we are looking at adding. So thanks so much, Kenneth. Great. And then if we can't access level 1, if we complete the question for next levels, will they be taken into consideration? No, they will not. So for facilities who succeed with level 1 and then move on to levels 2 and 3, this year the levels 2 and 3 questions are not verified, but you will get your scores from your self-assessment. So your total score in one section is composed of the verified score from level 1 and your self-assessment score from levels 2 and 3. But if you don't succeed with level 1, so if you have a no response somewhere at level 1, you can still respond to the questions at levels 2 and 3, but they will not be scored. Okay, great. Any other question? Last minute. How many level verifications in next verification 2025 model? We don't know. We know the verification will be expanded, but we don't know yet. So that will probably take a few months until we will know that, and then we will get that information from Cascale and Sumera and Wordley. All right, we are on time. So with that, I will just show you our final slide. And I thank you so much for joining, and I'm really pleased to see that so many joined this webinar, and I hope it is helpful for you, and I hope that this webinar will help you also to improve the quality of your quantitative data and improve your performance in your facilities. Thanks so much for joining, and goodbye. Have a good rest of your day.